Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the L.A.M.E Book Club podcast. My name is Melissa.
I'm Ellie.
And we're back with another episode of
Hot Guys with Unpopular Sauce. The energy level is low. It will build throughout the episode.
Yes.
My heart wasn't in that.
We actually recorded this episode already, and then immediately after, both of us were like, that wasn't good.
Not my best work.
Yeah. We're like, no, we need to redo this, but we didn't have time in the moment to do it again. So we are back.
So we are here
bright and early
in
the next
AM
day
for you. Yeah.
to redo this. So like Ellie said, the energy might be a little low at first, but I promise it'll get there. This episode
I
is
swear
good.
to you,
The problem
my
was
energy
us.
will build. Yeah.
Also, now that we've said this, I was going to say something to Ellie before we started recording, and I forgot until we were getting going, but now it works. I love how we both committed to the bit though and still wore the same shirts that we wore yesterday.
I did take it off, change into a black top, and then think, nah, and changed back.
No, I thought you meant yesterday after the recording. Because I immediately took it off after we recorded yesterday, so I only wore it for the recording. So I was like, It's not dirty, I'm gonna put it back on. Yeah.
No, I did change last night to go out for a girls' night, but I came home and then put this back on. So that's right. I slept in the sweater, and here I am in the recording again.
That's right.
But that
you heard it here first.
Speak so much to how comfortable this sweater is, which ties us into
there you go.
If you would like to shop for cozy bookish merch, head over to the Bean Workshop. You can get 10% off using the code L.A.M.E Book Club Pod, or you can go to the link in our Instagram bio, and your 10% will already be applied.
Look at you.
And guess what
Shameless
else we did
plugs
this
all
week?
over the place.
I know, that wasn't even in the
That
housekeeping. I
wasn't
just
planned.
added it. But guess what else we did this week?
What else did we do, Ellie?
We launched our Patreon.
What?
Woo-hoo!
Shut the front door. No, we didn't. Just kidding.
In fact,
that was
we
called
did.
acting. We did.
Acting.
I did know this.
On a real note, thank you guys so much for all of your support. It's been so fun to expand the L.A.M.E Book Club Pod, to plan our next book series, to meet so many of you. It's just been awesome. So without further ado, we are going to read off the names, the shout-outs for the Patreon subscribers. So we have Brandy, Sean, Josie, Brittany, Alyssa, Delaney, Mara, Kazerbeams, Natasha, McKenna, Renee, Emily, Katie, Nicole, Priscilla, Celeste, Greenwich and Lennox, Raffini J792, Lexi, Jessica, Emma, Alyssa, Stephanie, Katie, Kaylin, Haley, and Piper. Thank you all so much. From the bottom of my heart, truly.
From the bottom of my
for
feet,
you guys,
I'm more grateful than Ellie. So I'm just kidding. I've never understood that phrase, from the bottom of my heart.
The way I see it, it's like a heart, and you know how when your heart is filled, it just fills to the top.
No,
so from the bottom, I'm grateful.
Thank you. No, I do. Okay, let me clarify. I understand why, when you say bottom of your heart, what that means. I don't understand how that phrasing of it is what ended up becoming the iconic phrase that it is. Why not? And I know some people say, but not, with my whole heart, that's something too. And I know people say that, but it's just not as popular as from the bottom of my heart. It's with everything I have feels much more endearing, or with my every essence of my being, but from the bottom of my heart. I don't know.
Well then, from us to you, with every essence of our being. Thank you. Hey, I also learned where the scapegoat came from this week.
Is it from legitimate farmers when a goat would escape?
No. Oh, it's from the Bible, actually.
What?
Yeah. So when Hebrews would make sacrifices in the Old Testament to atone for their sins, one goat would be sacrificed, and they would let it go.
Why would they let one go?
There's a lot more theology. We can talk offline about that. But
sounds good.
One would get let go, and so they called that literally the scapegoat. Yeah,
interesting.
Yeah.
I mean,
the more you know.
To be fair, I wasn't wrong. It is about. I said farmers, shepherds.
Some could have been farmers. We don't know everybody's occupation in the world.
I think they didn't call. I would have. You know what? I'm going to be so bold as to say farmers are the modern day shepherds. So, ergo, it's essentially the same thing.
See that. I can see that. I'd back
they didn't have tractors. They had people who watched sheep and other herded animals. And that's essentially what farmers do if we're going to be real broken down about it. They watch animals. I mean, they do a lot more than that, but they didn't have... I'm going to just
watching
quit while I'm
animals
ahead.
is part of that.
Scapegoat. I wasn't entirely wrong. All that is what I was getting at.
Next week we're reading Riftborn. And if you want to read ahead in order to know what the heck we are talking about, there is still time for you to buy your book. You can get them on Amazon. You can just Google it in the Google.
It's also on Kindle Unlimited. If you have a KU subscription, then it's free.
Riftborn by Lennox and Greenwich, and it is a fabulous book. I 5-starred it, and you know how I feel like the Paul Hollywood of books sometimes, where I'm like, I absolutely won't give out a handshake, but that one got a handshake from me. It was very good.
That is so Ellie.
So we'll talk about it next week. This week, Wednesday, Kingdom of Ash, chapters 81 through 100. It is a very devastating week, so please join us for that. And Melissa, it's October. What do we got going on?
Well, we have lots going on in October, but most notably for the L.A.M.E Book Club podcast, we have our Hollywood. Nope. We have you messed me up when you when you're talking about the
Paul
Hollywood. No. It's early. I'm so sorry. We have our Halloween episode coming up, and if that in itself isn't intriguing enough, let me riddle you this. Ellie and I are going to dress up for this episode, except neither of us know what the other person's costume is, and you all will find out exactly when we do, live on the pod, watching each other's reactions. And it was... I said this earlier. I don't remember if I said it on our Hot Goss episode or if I said it on a book club episode, but I really shot myself in the foot with starting off with the Lorax last year. There's nothing quite like wearing a bald cap and painting your entire upper half of your body and wearing a mustache. And so I was like, man, how am I going to top that? I was like, honestly, how am I even going to like meet that this year? And I had an idea, and I'm sure it was like, it would have been fun, but it wasn't like har funny the way the Lorax was. And we all know that I have to outdo myself. So fortunately, I came across a fun little Instagram account that gave me so much inspiration. And dare I say, I am going to outdo myself this year. So
I cannot
you'll
wait.
have to
I'm so
tune
excited
in to watch that one. But more importantly, we have our spooky stories from you guys that we will be reading on the podcast. So there's a link in our bio on our Instagram. It's also in our link tree. If you want to submit a story, all the stories that are selected will receive a L.A.M.E Book Club pod sticker. And the spooky story of the evening that wins will receive a swag bag. So you definitely want to participate. Deadline to submit your stories it is going to be October 24th. So get those in and get writing, and we will be excited to read them.
Yeah, and don't procrastinate. Now is the time.
Yes.
On that note, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts so we can read them. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on... When I say read them, I don't just mean read them like just to read them.
I mean like
read
on
them
the
up
pod.
here. Yeah, on here. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Instagram. We're at L.A.M E Book Club Pod. Join our Patreon.
Yes.
And without
bonus
further
content.
ado... Yeah.
There's lots of goodies. Bonus content. Book club episodes.
Yes.
All the things.
Discord. All fun things.
Discord.
Okay, that's it. That's all for housekeeping. You ready to start this?
Am I? Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Trick
In
question.
the words of Ratatouille, let's do this thing. Okay. First and foremost, this episode is going to include spoilers for the books Red Queen and Powerless. So just a heads up, if you haven't read either of those, this might be one to skip because we go into detail about both plots. Okay, Melissa, I'm going to read a summary of a book, and you tell me what book you think this is.
Please do. However, I have one thing I'd like to say before you read the summary of the book.
Okay.
As Ellie just gave a spoiler warning for Red Queen and Powerless, also note, I guess if it's up to you if you don't care, I personally, Ellie has read both of these books in series. I have not read Red Queen. I've only read Powerless. And we do recognize that there's going to be people coming out of the woodworks saying that really awesome and really beautiful and talented blonde girl has no room to say anything because she hasn't read the books. And I hear you. I hear what you're saying, and I one up you and say, but actually, isn't it better to have someone give an unbiased, objective opinion simply based on facts? Huh?
Yes.
Huh?
I'd vote yes.
So this is my warning. I have not read Red Queen. Ellie is going to give me factual information about the books, and by the end of this, we'll make a decision on if I think Powerless was plagiarized or not. So all that to be said, I'm not going to continue to say I haven't read it. I'm making it known now, and now we can move forward.
Yeah. I will add to that just a little. I think it's good to have two views, exactly what Melissa said. Sometimes it's good to, like, I've read both, so I can give opinions on both easily, but Melissa hasn't, and so she can hear the facts unbiasedly and tell us what she thinks. So, with
you
that
just
being said,
took about 5 seconds to say what it took me 2 minutes to say, and that's why we're friends.
Thanks. Okay. In a kingdom. No, you've derailed me, but I'm back.
I have.
Back
all right, summary.
Give
Give me this summary.
In a kingdom, people are divided by those who have supernatural abilities and those who don't. Those with supernatural abilities are in the upper echelon of the community. They are superior and wealthy compared to the opposite, no power regular people who are lowly and bland. We follow a girl. We follow a girl who lives as a thief and pickpocket in order to make ends meet. At one point, she tries to pickpocket an unassuming boy and gets caught. That boy turns out to be the king's son, but he takes mercy on her. After a big public event, the girl from the slums is invited to live in the castle. There, she catches the eye of two prince brothers, the heir and the spare, both vying for...
I didn't think I'd laugh that hard again, but here I am. The heir and the spare, I cannot. Please tell me you made that up, or is that legitimately part of the summary? That is incredible. I love your brain, Ellie.
Thanks.
The heir and the spare?
Both vying for her affection. These brothers have the same father, but different mothers. One brother asks her to the ball, but the other, who likes her in secret, takes her away at night for a private dance lesson. While living at the castle, the girl joins the rebellion and schemes from the inside. The rebellion is made up of normal people who are planning to take down the monarchy that believes only people with supernatural abilities are worth anything. During the ball, the rebels come in and set bombs off. Later, the girl finds herself in an arena fighting to survive. The rebels come in and bomb the arena as well, giving the girl a chance to flee. There, she is exposed for being normal. The book ends with one brother ordering the girl's capture, and the hunt begins. Your take on this?
Well, I thought I was supposed to guess
tell me what book that you think we're talking about.
Well, considering the fact that I have not read Red Queen, that makes me feel like you want me to say Powerless, also because that is the summary of Powerless. But knowing what we're talking about and knowing who we are, I'm going to have to say that is the summary of Red Queen for 100.
It is Red Queen for 100. Good answer.
Good.
So
we're like just combined like 5 game shows at the same time. Good answer. That's Family Feud.
I know. As hilarious as that is, this actually is a very serious situation.
Yeah.
So today's highly requested episode is on the parallels of Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard and Powerless by Lauren Roberts. Like I said before, this summary it's too close for comfort, if you ask me. And it's a very serious situation, and we don't want to take it lightly, but there is a lot to be said here. So once again, let's regale the difference between the bad P word, plagiarism, versus inspiration.
Yep. And I guarantee you that was the first P word everyone was thinking, huh? Dirty, dirty
absolutely
birds.
honest, I didn't think there was a bad P word until I said
There
it out
isn't.
loud. Like, when I typed it, there
I
is.
mean, there's not like
There
a
so is.
bad. No. It's not like bad. It's there's words that make a lot of people uncomfortable, but I would not go so far as to say it's one of the like core like 4 or 5 that people consider. I don't know.
I guess.
Whatever. Let's move on.
Anyways, so plagiarism is the act of taking someone else's ideas, words or work, and presenting them as your own without giving proper credit. It can include copying and pasting from sources, paraphrasing without giving credit, submitting someone else's work as your own, or phrasing information in a way that's too close to the original. Inspiration is the feeling of enthusiasm you get from someone or something that gives you new and creative ideas. So, here are some facts about Red Queen and Powerless. Red Queen came out in 2015, and Powerless released in 2023, which that surprised me because I thought Powerless came out in like 2021 or 2022. I did not realize it was so recent.
I knew it, so not shocking. I remember when it came out.
Were you part of like the hype for when she was going to drop that book? Like, did you follow her before she dropped it?
No, I didn't know. Well, because you probably don't know, and if you don't know, you don't need to look it up. Do you remember what month in 2023 it came out?
I think
I
November.
want to say it was like November. Oh, that's probably what it was. I was still I was committed to reading at that point, but I was still new enough to the reading scene to be aware of like books and be enjoying them, but I was not in on like who's up and coming and what's like super new in the book news. We had just started our podcast, and at that point, like I was just figuring out where I was going with all of that. So I heard about it not long after it was released, but I did not like hear anything about it leading up to it.
Well, 2023, that's the date. On Publishers Weekly, Lauren Roberts was interviewed and this conversation was recorded. What are some of your biggest fantasy influences? Asks the interviewer. Lauren says, I always like to say that Powerless is a mix between Victoria Aveyard's Red Queen and The Hunger Games. Red Queen was one of the first books I remember reading, which is why I love fantasy. I was obsessed with that book. I love the world building and the idea of these different powers. Ooh.
Is that the entire quote, or is that just the part where she pulled from Red Queen and then also talked about Hunger Games?
As far as what the blog gave, that was the whole chapter, or like the whole summary of her answer.
Okay. Well, but it was a summary. It wasn't like an exact direct quote.
No, I think it is an exact direct quote. It's like the whole answer that was given, and then they asked the next question.
Okay.
So right there, honestly, I maybe am too naive sometimes, but I really did want to give this author the benefit of the doubt. I was like, maybe she just accidentally wrote the same story. That can happen. I don't doubt that in a world of 6-7 billion people that like someone's told the exact same story once, perhaps. Yeah. And I honestly wanted to maybe pass the blame a little. Like, this was her first book. Maybe she'd never read that, and she just, I mean, it's not like they're not super uncommon themes having, you know, a split of people with power and people without.
True. You have something? However, I'm agreeing with everything you're saying. I was just thinking there's so many of the similarities are things that no one has like even intellectual rights to, like the pickpocket concept, and or like the one person is lowborn and they fall in love with the prince or princess, and I mean I feel like that's every book really, like and they're like the idea of some kind of tournament and for some kind of prize or freedom or something, and all of those things are just truly sprinkled throughout most every story. But what got me, at least in your summary, was beyond those things, it was also the like incredibly small details, like how the brothers had 2 different moms and how one of the brothers stole her away for a secret dance, And like those are
Yeah.
things that I'm like,
should be
honestly,
special to one story.
not necessarily, like, again, no one owns the intellectual right to dancing. Like, that's, you can include that. It's more of like how it was written in. Like, I can't speak to anything other than what you just told me as far as how it was done in Red Queen, but like in Powerless, when Kai was dancing with Peyton and like in order to give her what she wanted, like it could have been literally anything else. Like she didn't have to write it as dancing. Is dancing super sweet and romantic and cute, and was that like the main driver of Powerless? Absolutely. But there's also a lot of really other super endearing and cute things that exist in the world that she could have used in lieu of that. And I think if she had done that with the little things, in my opinion, people would be a lot less up in arms about like the similarities, because the big things, you know, Victoria doesn't own the rights to those in her story exclusively, and those can be technically explained away. It's the little things, like so far of what you've said, that are getting me hung up on the similarities.
You know what? I don't know why, but this has come to the front of my mind. There is a movie. It's a rendition of The Jungle Book. It's a live action. It has the guy who plays the Bruce Lee reenactments. I don't know his name, and he's also the voice of David from Lilo and Stitch. But
I have no idea where you're going with this, and I'm excited to see how this ties together.
I grew up with that movie. I loved it. I rewatched it recently to kind of like trigger nostalgia and just see if I still love it. And I do. Fabulous. You should watch it. But I realized this is not the story of the Jungle Book. This is straight up the story of Tarzan. The boy gets taken from his parents, dropped in the jungle, raised by the animals. Those become his found family. A girl comes back and he realizes like, oh, I'm fascinated with her culture and with what she, like the humans. And so then they raise him kind of to like recognize more human things, like to learn about humans, learn about like what people do, and bring him into civilization. And then he ends up wanting to go with her, and he's conflicted. Should he leave his animal family or should he go with her? And then they end up, I think, living in the jungle. So it's essentially Tarzan. However,
Ellie, I hate to break it to you. That is also Jungle Book. What you just said is Jungle Book. And I didn't realize how similar the two movies were, because they feel very different.
Exactly. Like, and so there's a way to essentially tell the same story and have the audience truly just not recognize that's the same story.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Way to go, Disney. Props to you for taking quite literally the same storyline.
They took
copied
it from
themselves and still made it an entirely new movie that we all know and love. That's incredible. Honestly, let's just all give them a round of applause really quick.
I will say Jungle Book was, I believe, a book first, so I don't think Disney did take it from themselves. They just reiterated
so true.
in different font.
Also, one of those movies is superior, and there's a correct answer. We're going to say it at the same time, Ellie, and if you don't, this might be the end of the podcast.
Oh, it's so easy. 1, 2, 3.
Tarzan.
Tarzan. Yeah.
Okay, you waited,
immediately.
But that's... Immediately, no, you hesitated.
I think it's the lag in our video.
On my end, you said it like 4 seconds after I did.
Tarzan.
So I was like,
Tarzan. I said it at the same time on my end. Okay, so
that's exciting.
That being said, I think that there is a graceful way to tell the same story, but just change it up enough that completely moves the audience in a different direction, where you're like, oh, that's not at all the same thing. So that I gave you the body of the book Red Queen, but in reality there is a lot more to the story that does somewhat move away from the Powerless storyline. Okay. So here are some main differences for the Red Queen. The society is split between two classes: silver, which are those with power, and red, those without. If any silver... Did you have something?
I was going to say, I thought you were telling me the differences. It sounds a lot like ordinaries and elites.
No, that's just important to the rest of it, so just bear with me. Changed enough?
Here are the differences. In Red Queen, there's a young girl, an orphan named Peyton. She lives in the slums.
And if that's not enough evidence, I don't know what is. Okay. So the silver and red. If any silver does not have a job by their I'm sorry, that's not right. If any red does not have a job by their 18th birthday, they are conscripted into the war. The main character, Mayor Barrow, attends a royal event where she accidentally reveals her power to manipulate electricity during a confrontation. So the main character does gain a power, which is a massive difference than powerless. In order to
Quite
save
literally
face,
the opposite, dare I say.
In order to save face, the royal family decides to hide Mare's true identity by claiming that she is a long-lost silver, and she is brought to the palace to train and become engaged to Prince Cal. But she starts to fall for Cal's half-brother, Maven. So, kind of in a sense, yes and no. Like, she's still hiding her identity because Reds should not be able to have power. So... I don't know, where
Ellie.
the parallel is, but I also see a massive difference there.
That I was going to say, you might as well have just not told me the summary, because based on what you just said about the reds and the silvers and then the main what is her name? Bello? Hello, Bello?
Barrow. Mayor Barrow.
Mayor?
M-A-R-E. Yeah.
Like horse.
Yeah.
Isn't that okay? Mare, like the fact that she actually has powers and didn't know, and the fact that they brought her to the castle to train her powers and then also to marry the prince, like all of that, other than Peyton being brought to the palace, everything else is the exact opposite in Powerless. She has no power. She's brought, I mean, against her will to train for a death tournament, and the dad wants nothing to do with her, wants her away from neither of the sons. So like all of that's actually
true,
very
but I do
different.
think there is an underlying theme that needs to be acknowledged of hiding your identity in plain sight.
Okay, but again, that to me is like so broad that you can't consider that like that no one has intellectual properties. Yeah,
right.
Like that. The idea of hiding who you are, your abilities in plain sight, if that's the case, we have to say Sarah J. Matt, she plagiarized because Selena did that for the first couple books. Like, we have to, like, there's so many other books and stories that do that I don't think that we can even really address that as part. Why am I 7 years old? As part of the issue here, because that's just a really general dare I say trope.
Yeah. Okay. Let me continue on with the differences. So did I already say in order to save face they decide to hide Mare's identity?
I don't think so. So
okay.
let's start
there.
If I
did, you get to hear it again. In order to save face, the royal family decides to hide Mare's true identity by claiming she is a long-lost silver, and she is brought to the palace to train and become engaged to Prince Cal, but she starts to fall for Cal's half-brother Maven. I did say this.
I lied.
When Mare,
you did.
It's okay. When Mare joins the rebellion, she learns Maven joined as well. He is a really good guy, in her opinion.
Also different. Kai never enjoy. Well, in Powerless, Kai never joined the. Yeah, well, he's at war with himself for different reasons, but he never joined the rebellion. Like that was
Yeah,
he killed them. He killed people in the rebellion. So another mark for separation.
It is revealed that Mare possesses a genetic mutation in her blood that grants her silver-like powers, making her stronger than both reds and silvers. She's not the only one with this mutation, but others that have it have been executed. Mare was spared because her powers emerged in front of numerous silver witnesses, making it impossible to hide what had happened. Then we fast forward to the end. The Queen reveals that she and Maven have been orchestrating events to manipulate Mare, aiming to secure Maven's position as king and eliminate Cal. Maven suggests that they were responsible for the explosion to ruin the Scarlet Guard's reputation. Which is the rebellion. The Queen then uses her mind control abilities to compel Cal to murder his father on live television, branding both him and Mare as traitors and paving the way for Maven's coronation.
My goodness.
So there's a plot twist in the end. It does not at all resemble Powerless in the end, in my opinion.
Now there's two separate books.
Yeah. So I guess that answers my next question, which was, is this enough of a differentiator to move the P word out of the realm for Powerless, or are we still sitting in that uncomfortable space?
In my humble opinion, I think Lauren made some boo-boos with some of the details that she added, like the ones I mentioned earlier. However, I think that I'm gonna err on the side of technically no. They are different enough for there to be no legal ramifications. Maybe she was subconsciously a little bit too influenced or referencing, but let's also take a step back here and recognize that she was a teenager when she started this book. I'm pretty sure by the time it was actually published, she was 20. Like, she's a young mare, if you will. And yeah, Philly. I'm changing. See, I'm gonna do what Lauren did. Take mare and make it Philly. No, just kidding. But like, you're all impressionable. Like, she's so young, and to write like such an amazing story at such a young age, whether it was influenced or not. I mean, okay, if that's the case, granted, it wasn't quite as similar, but like, again, SJM was influenced by Cinderella for Throne of Glass and Beauty and the Beast for ACOTAR, and like, there's a lot of influences.
Yeah,
that was not a good example because she absolutely well. ACOTAR is very
fairy tale retellings fall in a completely different realm, in my opinion. Like, there is no plagiarizing because fairy tales are a tale as old as time. You can retell, like, I have so many books on the shelf that are just fairy tale retellings of Cinderella, Beauty and the Beast, of all that.
But is that not what tropes are? And that's essentially what Lauren used. She did use
a lot of tropes. I don't know if in this case specifically, for me at least, if the tropes were the issue, because there was, the two brothers fighting over the girl, the chosen one, that kind of thing. Yeah. For me, the glaring issues are the structure of the story with that summary that I gave you before. Yeah. Just in the order of it too, because it wasn't like,
It sounds, in my opinion, more like the first half of the book is a little too similar to Red Queen, but the second half is really where things start to take a turn because, like, the queen is, dare I say, useless in Powerless. And Kit doesn't kill the king, and there's no, like, engagement between Peyton and Kit. And, like, there's a lot. I think the second half of the story is very different. Plus, you don't have any of the element of the purge. What was it called? I can't remember what the like trial game thing that they were in. Was it trial?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Whatever, it doesn't matter.
Trials.
I don't remember what that was actually called, but like, there's zero element of that in Red Queen, and
there is. They fight in arenas. Towards the end, they're put in an arena. Okay, but fighting in an arena is a trial, and they're actually, I didn't mention this, but there is a trial to win. In the beginning, there are trials of the Silvers like showcasing their powers, and it's to, I believe, win over one of the princes, like win an engagement with the prince, something like that.
Okay.
I
digress about that since that was not included in the summary. It was just.
I apologize. Didn't think it was important. I thought there was enough similarities.
I'm just kidding. I don't know. I think the second half is really where Lauren kind of started to make it her own, and the first half seems more like, okay, that's a little too close for comfort.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
I do agree. It's just a lot of the like a lot of details are different, like what I mentioned, but there's a lot of random details and that she kept the same, even again subconsciously, that are just weird to have kept the same.
I didn't mention this one, but also Mare in Red Queen has a sister who is a seamstress.
Shut up.
And that's like the only girl that she's close with. Yeah.
No.
And so that's just another small, it's in the details. The devil's in the details.
Literally, there's a needle and thread on Powerful.
Yeah.
Because of Adina.
Yeah.
And like stuff like that, like you couldn't have made her, I don't know, like crochet or something. Like that's at least like, if you want to do it for the needle or the hook, like it'd have to be a hook. It wouldn't be a needle, but like, I don't know, make it like same but different, not literally same.
And again, you don't have, no one has the intellectual property of
seamstress
sewing. But then when Lauren comes out and says, "Oh, I loved Red Queen. It was my favorite book. I was obsessed with it," and then you regurgitate literally
Yeah.
Red Queen, I think that there's an issue there. So
Well,
other readers, oh, did you want to?
I was gonna say I don't necessarily feel like she exactly regurgitated Red Queen, but continue on with what you're gonna say, because I have an opinion to say at the end of this.
Yeah. This comes from, so I'm going to read other readers' opinions on this book as well.
Okay.
On Reddit, Phenomenal Phoenix says, well, the
Ooh,
description when I
name.
Google it, I know. Well, the description when I Google it says, perfect for fans of Red Queen and the Hunger Games. I guess having the same plot line as Red Queen would mean the fans would possibly enjoy it. I was like, that's so snarky.
Touche.
This one comes from Reading Makes Me Happy. They say, I went into this book without reading anything about it and immediately realized she has just combined the Hunger Games and Red Queen. She has characters named Gale. I think Gale is the lady who kind of raised Kai and Kit and gave them baked goods, the cook. Isn't that her?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
It is.
And then,
you're so right. And Peyton's last name is Gray.
Peyton's last name is Gray, Lucy Gray.
Yeah.
One of the most shocking scenes to me is about halfway through when they've entered the games and she runs into the guy who can project images out of Kit and her child self. She basically combines the scenes from Catching Fire with the Jabberjays and the scene of Triss in Divergent in the simulation. The character even says, this isn't real, just like Triss does, and then she breaks the glass in the simulation. So
that feels like a stretch to me because, I mean, does that happen? Yes, but it's like, in this exact same review, this person said, oh, it reminded me so much of Red Queen and Hunger Games and I knew nothing about it. And then you're like, yeah, plus you ripped off Divergent. It's like, okay, well, we're pulling in way too many stories here now. And all that to say is you can't have ripped off one if you're pulling inspiration from like 7. But I don't know. That feels like a stretch to me, the whole like saying it was a mix between Hunger Games and Divergent, because everything is a mix of things. Like, there's hardly any original ideas anymore. Everything is just like someone else's version of something.
I know, but then also, like, does that necessarily make it right?
Well,
but
no. But I'm saying that one example, it feels like a stretch to be like, oh yeah, plus she copied this from this book and this from this book. Like,
yeah.
That's I'm specifically talking about this review and that example. That example feels like a stretch to me, but I don't disagree with everything else that was said.
But in lieu of like what we're doing, I think it's one of those like add it to the pile, and when that pile is continuously growing into a monstrous size of there are so many similarities between these 4 books, it's glaring.
Well, but what I'm saying is I don't think this should be added to the pile because this is the first time I'm hearing Divergent even being entered into the chat. And so that's what I'm saying. It's like, okay, well now it's very similar to Hunger Games and Red Queen, and that's the argument people are making. So it's like we can't be like, also it's really similar to this one scene in this completely different series. It's like, well, I mean, what isn't at that point? Now let's start talking about every single book and say how Lauren has 0 original concepts and ripped off everything. That's
sure. Okay, I
think that's getting too in the weeds. I'm not saying I totally agree with you. Like, there are too many similarities that are starting to stack up, but I don't think we need to throw this one on that pile.
Okay. But to play my own advocate.
But I want to.
I would agree with that more. I think if we were saying like, oh, that's coming from the 4th book of the series of Unfortunate Events book, like the random ones. But when you're pulling, I mean, let's just be honest, there were like top 10 books when we were growing up was Red Queen, Hunger Games, Twilight, Divergent, The Uglies, if you will. Like, those were the big YA books. So when it's easy to recognize, and I think that if you're pulling from those very, very popular books rather than, one-off books that like people maybe haven't read, I think that I disagree
that's more because what we're talking about is stealing of intellectual property, and it doesn't matter if it's a really popular book or a small one. If you're ripping off someone else's story, that's wrong. So it's more easily recognized and more noticeable in large series like Hunger Games and Red Queen, like really popular ones.
That's true. Yeah.
But so I don't think it makes it worse either way. I think, but again, to what I was saying earlier, I just think, I don't know. I like, she never says Divergent wasn't inspiration. I hardly ever hear anyone compare it to Divergent. And so it's like, I just feel like people are grasping at straws at that point. Like they're really upset that she very clearly, like took a lot of inspiration from Red Queen and Hunger Games, and it's like to me again, it's just looking for things to be irritated about. It's like plus this one random scene in a different series.
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
what it feels like it's doing.
We've definitely heard that about SJM when we had the whole dispute with the Black Jewel series. People were coming out of the woodworks like, and she took from, this part of Lord of the Rings, and she took from this random TV show, and I'm like, but okay. But so
that's just how I feel about
straws. Yeah,
exactly. That's how I feel about this comparison to Divergent, because is it similar? Yes, but that is, again, in my opinion, based on the summary of everything that we've talked about, that is probably one of the only similarities to Divergent. So it feels like a lot to add that much weight to this one scene that's similar. Like, I don't know. That's I'm not trying to give Lauren credit that she doesn't deserve, but I also want to make this as objective as possible and not just like crap on her because of things that are also kind of similar.
I honestly did try to find something to counter the argument of, I read both, or not counter this argument, but to find something along the lines of this argument saying I read both and they didn't remind me of each other, similar to Black Jewels and ACOTAR. A lot of people were like, I read both, and I didn't even catch a whiff of ACOTAR in Black Jewels. But to be absolutely honest with you, I had no luck finding such argument. When I type in Red Queen, Powerless, it's endless results of like, I cannot believe how much this is ripped off, which to me speaks, I don't know if, obviously if Lauren did this on purpose, there's a problem there. But if Lauren subconsciously did this and maybe just hadn't read Red Queen in 10 years like me, I don't know. But where were her editors and her publishers? Where was her team in this saying, this book is way too similar? How did this get out? That's I'm blown away by.
That's where I'm like, because, she's with a major publisher. It's not like they have a legal team. Like, they're not going to shoot themselves in the foot like I did with our Halloween episode last year and publish a book that I just had to reference that again. And do something that they're like, well, we might get sued and lose millions of dollars. Like, they're gonna
sue la vu.
Sue la vu. They're gonna really look into this and make sure that everything is kosher, if you will. And that, again, to me, just even speaks more volumes as to, is it heavily inspired by? No doubt about it. But is it plagiarized? I don't think we can go so far as to say the P word. I don't know, but I have that's like my objective third party opinion. I have a personal opinion as well that I will wait until we're very, very done with to share.
Okay. Well, we are hitting that point. Here is my ending note. The similarities between Powerless and Red Queen are frequent enough to raise questions about the originality of Lauren Roberts' work. Whether or not this was intentional, readers recognizing those similarities stresses the importance of originality and respecting intellectual property in publishing. Selfishly, like for me, I don't want to read another rendition of the same story, but morally, I do think that this is wrong. I don't know how this whole team overlooked this, but I think that there are enough similarities in, like I said, it's in the details. It's not so much in, there's an upper class with powers and there's a lower class. I think there were endless roads you could have taken with that start. Totally. It's just the remaining plot lines, the order that everything came in, the details of the sister's a seamstress, they did the dance thing, the bombing happened at the ball. Like, there's just these little things where it could have been anything else. Why was it that? So
that's so true. All right. Well, so I feel like Michael Gary Scott with my snapping this episode. In the very beginning after the summary, I was like, wow, that's the same book. And then after you gave me a little bit more detail on some of the differences, I was like, wow, that's a different book. And I am back and I have a final stance, and I was already leaning this way, but honestly, your closing argument just sold me. I think I'm going to have to say that, yes, that is the same book. It's the same. Like, and honestly, what really pushed me over the edge to agree with you is what you said just now about how like you don't want to read a regurgitation of someone else's idea of the same book, that is for us to do on our Shut the Fanfic Up episodes, which will be coming out shortly. Shameless plug. But that's for us mere amateurs that just talk on the internet to do, not distinguished publishers. And I just think about how irritated I get when I read a story and I'm like, oh my gosh, this was essentially this book, but I liked the way they did it the first time. Like, so I didn't need someone else to like change it and give us a great value version of what a story I already know and love. And I personally loved Powerless, so I'm not going to say it's a great value version, but I also really loved it because I didn't have it. To me, it was very original and different, and because I didn't have the background of Red Queen. So now I totally see why people who read it would be annoyed, and not just annoyed, like angry. Like I would love to hear Victoria's thoughts on this, truthfully. Like,
I know. I'm surprised.
That would be juicy.
I think you mentioned this earlier, but if there was anything legally going on, like, we wouldn't know about it. They'd probably have to keep all of that under wraps, but I'm curious.
Oh, yeah, I said that in
what
our
her thoughts
recording
are.
that we didn't end up using.
We will never release
but, like,
to the world.
yeah, because, like, if there is a legal battle about this, I'm leaning towards there not being one, because I don't think she would continue the series if there was.
Right, absolutely.
And also, like, yes, legally, like, they're gonna keep things under wraps until they either settle or like have like some kind of like real trial. But like, I still think with how big this is, it's not something that you can necessarily keep secret super well. So like, I do think secrets and would have slipped, and like word would have gotten out that there's maybe we don't know details, but like some kind of ongoing legal thing.
I did read a blog that talked about this book specifically, or these two books specifically, and the like legal ramifications that can happen. And it was just with books and with writing, it's so much more different than, you know, I made this invention and someone copied my invention. Like, there's a very clear copycat situation there. But if you just, it's like recipes. If you just add a little too much salt in this one, it changes up the whole thing, and you can't come after someone for the same thing because there is a difference. So I'm sure that's kind of where this lies, is there's enough of a difference. Plus, I will also say, one of the main differences between Red Queen and Powerless, in my opinion, is that Red Queen does lean more towards the fantasy side and driving the plot, world building, etc., where Powerless was very romance driven with a sprinkle of fantasy. So there is that. There is enough of that.
That's true.
And that's, I guess, where I'll end.
And that's that on that.
Yeah.
But I think my official stance is that it's too similar to be a coincidence.
It's too close.
And like, we have to acknowledge that. And as much as I love Powerless and Lauren and the series and everything, like, I can't not admit that it's freakishly similar. And I'm grateful that I didn't read Red Queen first, because I think I would have been in the same camp as everyone who's angry about it. Yeah. And I'm glad that I loved it, because I really did like it. And I like to like books, you know, like, it's fun. Well, I guess
if we're just being horrible, if you really did love it, I'm sure you'd love Red Queen too.
Well, probably. And I am gonna read Red Queen, and we don't have to do a whole episode, like, I will report back after officially reading it and giving like an official stance then too. But it's moved up on my TBR. There's just so many other books that I want and need to read first. So I am going to at some point, but I'm glad that my experience of reading this book wasn't tainted. Like, and I feel bad for everyone whose was. Yeah. Like, yeah. That's just like the honest truth, because it's just not fun. Like, it's not fun to read a book, a weird, like a slightly different version of a book you've already read. Like, I want to be transformed into a new world. I want to be like taught magic systems and introduced to new love interests, and like just experience new stories and stuff that I haven't before. And I recognize that it's impossible, or just like very unlikely, that it's going to be like an entirely new world or concept, but something at least original enough to where I'm not like immediately reminded of an entire book, not even just like elements of other series
a Jungle Book
or
Tarzan
books.
situation, if you will. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Like I never had, other than the fact that they were little boys, little orphaned boys in jungles being raised by animals. Like I never once crossed my mind that they were even remotely similar. Truthfully, I didn't even go so far as to think about the fact that technically they're both Disney. Like it just went whew. And that's what I want books to do. Like I don't want the similarities to be glaringly obvious. I want them to go whew.
And I think that is done enough in the book world. You can never
100%.
have an original thought, really.
Exactly.
Everything in the world inspires you, but it's how you form that. Similar to, again, Sarah with the Black Jewels. She used a lot of similar elements, but it did not scream the same story. It was a completely different story.
Absolutely. So, and maybe if Lauren had taken like a darker... because you said Red Queen is young adult, right?
Yeah.
If Lauren had taken just like a darker route with the story, I think maybe that would have even made it a lot different. But Powerless is super lighthearted and very when I say darker, I also don't even necessarily mean like inappropriate. I just mean like heavy. Like, because like I think it could even still be YA and dark, you know. It doesn't have to be like terrifying or anything, but it can be like a very deep book and still be young adult. And maybe if she had even gone a little bit more that route, it would be, the similarities are slapping you in the face. Like no one's gonna be like, wow, that didn't remind me at all of Red Queen. But I don't think people would be like as irritated as they are.
Honestly, I just think don't do the exact same thing. Like
That's so true.
If you have to do a ball, don't do a ball. Do a carnival. If you have to have the sister be a seamstress, don't have her be a seamstress. Have her, like you said, do crochet.
I think that's maybe a little too, I don't know, just don't have, and like I understand specifically with Powerless, like, and I don't know about Red Queen, but like Adina's sewing comes into play with like the vests specifically, and like how we're all assuming Mac and Pei are gonna meet in this third book, and they both have the vests that Adina made them, so like that's gonna be how like they can recognize, and so like I do understand that like this her being a seamstress wasn't as simple as like, well, I really liked it in Red Queen, so I'm just adding it in. Like there is a big meaning to it. But again, she could have done something else. Like instead, she didn't have to be a seamstress and make them vests. She could have been a florist and given them dry pressed flowers that they keep around, or you know what I mean? Like I don't know, something else.
Yeah,
that could have connected them in the same way the vest probably will, but it didn't have to be sewing and the exact same thing as Red Queen.
Yeah. So
I don't know. I feel like we've talked this into the ground.
Into the ground. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's our thoughts.
That's where
let us know yours. Let's find out if you think it's way too similar. If there are some redeeming qualities here that we've missed, please let us know. And
if any of you are people who have read both and felt like Powerless was different enough to where you're like, yeah, sure, maybe it reminded me, but like you were able to absolutely disassociate and separate them from like and appreciate for them individually, please let us know, because I would love to hear
from you.
I know I would love to hear like what in your opinion made Powerless different enough to where you were able to be like, yeah, this was its own story. Yeah. But other than that,
guys, that's it. Have a great week on this low note. Yes, you can subscribe, follow us on Instagram and all the things.
Check out.
We'll see you guys on Wednesday.
Yes, check out chapters 81 through 100 of Kingdom of Ash on Wednesday. And join our Patreon. Link is on our bio. And
right,
I'm so bad at editing these. Okay, goodbye.